Story 1, The Basement Holding Room. Part 1, Segment 1. Evelyn Hart had been in Seattle for only 11 days, but the city already felt like it was pressing its cold forehead against her own. The mist never truly lifted on Capitol Hill, rather, it drifted in thin veils between the lampposts, clinging to the brick facades as if afraid of losing its grip. The house she rented a room in, a narrow, three-story brick building owned by a retired electrician named Reginald Crowe, sat wedged between a dentist's office and a Victorian painted a flaking blue. From the street, Crowe's house looked ordinary, even dull. But there was something about it, something in the way it loomed, as if watching the sidewalk with hooded eyes, that made Evelyn's stomach tighten the first night she stepped inside. Still, the price was good. Too good. An $1 rent had drained her savings like a punctured lung. So she told herself to stop being dramatic. Her room was on the second floor, overlooking the side yard where moss devoured the fence posts. She worked remotely as a designer, brand identities, product mock-ups, all the usual digital alchemy, and spent her first week reorganizing her life into a quiet, intentional routine. But she could never shake the faint smell drifting up from the floorboards, metal, damp earth, something like rusting tools left in the rain. Crowe himself was polite in a stilted, old-fashioned way. "Miss Hart," he'd greet her with a stiff nod, enunciating every consonant as if each were its own commandment. He walked with a slight stoop, his shoulders permanently rounded from decades spent leaning over junction boxes. His hands, spotted with age, were always immaculate, no grease, no soil, no dust beneath his nails. She found this odd for someone who supposedly did maintenance in the basement nearly every afternoon. Their interactions were brief, but harmless. At least at first. It was the noises that unsettled her. Thumps. Scrapes. Sharp metallic snaps that echoed through the ventilation ducts long past midnight. The first few nights, she blamed the old house, its settling wood, its stubborn pipes, but the sounds grew distinct. Intentional. Like something being dragged. Crowe always locked the basement door. She learned this the hard way when she accidentally tried the knob after miscounting the hallway doors. "Private workspace," he had said behind her, his voice appearing out of nowhere. She jerked. He must have moved silently down the stairs, yet she hadn't heard a step. Dangerous if one's not familiar with wiring. He smiled, but his eyes remained absolutely still. That was when she bought the cameras. Small, discreet, motion-activated. Nothing expensive, just enough to reassure herself. She installed one facing the hallway, one aimed toward the stairwell landing, and one outside her bedroom door. The fourth, almost impulsively, she placed near an air vent that connected down into the basement. She told herself it was for peace of mind. She told herself she'd never actually need it. The fifth night, it rained the fragile drizzle Seattle specialized in, fine, silver droplets that clung to windows like fingerprints. Evelyn finished a logo draft around 1:42 a.m., saved the file, stretched, and rubbed her burning eyes. She shut her laptop and slid into bed, letting the rain-blurred quiet settle around her. At 2:08 a.m., her phone vibrated. Motion detected, camera 4, basement vent. Evelyn's pulse kicked hard. She blinked at the dark ceiling, then reluctantly turned on her phone's screen. The notification glowed. She should ignore it, she told herself. She didn't. The camera feed opened in a grainy, low-light view. At first, she saw only the vent grill and the faint shifting of dust motes drifting like pale snow. Then a movement, a shadow, something crossing beneath the vent. She leaned closer, breath held. The figure came into view. Mr. Crowe, hunched, shuffling into the frame. His jaw was clenched so tightly the tendons jutted like ropes under the skin. His hands gripped something, someone. A young woman, bound at the wrists and ankles, duct tape pressed brutally across her mouth. Her hair, dark and soaked with sweat, stuck to her cheek. Evelyn froze. Her breath stuttered, her body locking in disbelief before the shock screamed through her like a blade. Crowe dragged the girl across the concrete basement floor toward a side door, the maintenance room, as he'd once called it. but this woman wasn't unconscious. She struggled, weakly, her body jerking in small desperate motions. He hissed something Evelyn couldn't hear. Something sharp, angry. Evelyn clamped her hands over her mouth to keep from making a sound. The girl shook her head violently, a muffled sob slipping through the tape. Crow slammed the door shut behind them. The video ended, cutting back to the still frame of the vent. Evelyn snapped upright, shaking uncontrollably. The house groaned softly under the weight of the rain. Somewhere below, a faint metallic clink echoed. "Call the police," she mouthed silently to herself. Her hands trembled so badly she nearly dropped the phone, but she managed to dial 911. Seattle Emergency Services. "What's your?" "There's a man, my landlord. He has a woman tied up in the basement. Please, you have to send someone right now." She gave the address, voice cracking. The operator instructed her to stay inside her room, lock the door, remain on the line until officers arrived. That was when she heard it. A slow, deliberate creak rising from the hallway below. Footsteps. Heavy, uneven, climbing the stairs one at a time. Crow. Evelyn's stomach dropped into ice. She whispered into the phone, "He's coming up, he's coming up. Barricade your door if possible. Officers are 3 minutes away." 3 minutes felt like the stretch of a lifetime. The footsteps reached the second-floor landing. A soft exhale, too close. A shadow under her door. Then, thud. The entire door shuddered. "Miss Hart," Crow's voice croaked, hoarse and trembling with barely contained fury. "Open this door." Another earth-shaking thud, the sound of metal hitting wood. Something heavy. Something brutal. Evelyn staggered backward, heart convulsing painfully in her chest. "Open this door," he roared, "or I'll burn this goddamn house to the ground." The 911 operator's voice crackled through the phone. "Move away from the door. Find another exit. Do you have a window? A fire escape?" She darted to the window. The cold pane rattled beneath her fingers. The roof access, yes. She'd noticed the small hatch on her second night, a maintenance window leading out onto the steep roof tiles. Below, another vicious blow splintered wood. Crow was using a sledgehammer. She heard its unmistakable weight. Evelyn shoved the window open, letting in a blast of cold mist. The roof slanted sharply, slick with rain, but she scrambled through anyway, crying out as the frame scraped her shoulder. Behind her, Crow bellowed in triumph as the door finally buckled. She crawled across the roof, clutching at the shingles. Rain smeared her vision. Her ankle slipped. She lurched forward, fingers scraping desperately for grip. "Miss Hart." Crow's voice erupted behind her, from inside her room now. "Come back here." She didn't dare look. At the edge of the roof sat a metal garbage bin in the narrow alley below. It was her only option. She pushed herself up, chest heaving, and leapt. The world spun. The landing punched the scream out of her body. Pain tore through her right ankle, a snapping, sickening twist. She gasped, gagging on the sharp burst of agony. The garbage bin rocked and clanged violently beneath her. Lights flashed at the far end of the alley. Sirens cut through the rain-heavy air. Crow appeared at the rooftop edge, silhouetted against the clouded sky. His face was a warped mask of rage. Police cars screeched to a halt out front. Shouts exploded through the night. Crow vanished from the roof. Evelyn tried to crawl away, but her ankle couldn't bear weight. Boots splashed through puddles, officers rushing past her, guns drawn. More shouting inside the house. Then the scent hit her. Gasoline. A sharp, suffocating reek pouring from the open front door. "He's got a gas can," an officer yelled. Another voice, "Move! Move! He's trying to ignite." A chaotic roar of footsteps followed, the crackle of a taser deployment cutting through the tension. Within seconds, officers dragged Crow out into the rain. he thrashed, spitting curses, his face contorted. "They'll never find them all," he shouted before an officer forced his face into the soaked pavement. Evelyn lay trembling in the alley, unable to tear her gaze from the house. She didn't know it yet, not until hours later, in the harsh fluorescent glow of the police station, but the maintenance room Crow had dragged the girl into wasn't just a room. It was a holding chamber. And inside it, investigators would discover 11 small skulls arranged with chilling precision. Victims dating back to 1987. Segment 2. The hospital lights were too bright, clinical white, humming faintly like trapped insects, and Evelyn felt as if they were drilling straight through her skull. She lay in a curtained-off section of the emergency ward, the smell of antiseptic sharp enough to sting her eyes. Her ankle throbbed beneath layers of gauze and a temporary splint, every pulse of pain shot up her leg in hot, jagged waves. She couldn't shake the feeling that Crow was still somewhere close. His voice, raw, furious, echoed in her mind, "Open this door or I'll burn this goddamn house to the ground." Even here, surrounded by nurses and monitors, she flinched whenever footsteps approached. The nurse checking her vitals offered a small, sympathetic smile. "You're lucky the can broke your fall the way it did. Fractured ligaments, but nothing shattered. You'll need a boot for a while." Lucky. The word tasted foreign. As the nurse left, the curtain swayed open again, this time revealing 2 detectives. The first was a tall woman in her late 40s with a tired but watchful face, her brown hair pinned back in a utilitarian twist. Detective Mara Layton. The other, younger and sharper-featured, was Detective Joel Ramirez, whose expression hovered somewhere between concern and calculation. Layton stepped closer. "Miss Hart? I'm Detective Layton, Seattle PD. This is Detective Ramirez. We'd like to ask you a few questions, if you're up for it." Evelyn swallowed. Yes, of course." Ramirez flipped open a notebook. "First, you're safe. Mr. Crow is in custody. And the woman he dragged into the basement, she's at Harborview, stable. You calling 911 saved her life." The words hit Evelyn like a slow, delayed impact. Saved her life. She hadn't expected that, not after seeing how limp the woman had been. Layton's voice softened. "We know you've been through something traumatic. We'll keep this as gentle as we can. Can you walk us through exactly what you saw tonight?" Evelyn took a shaking breath. She described the grainy camera footage, Crow dragging the girl, the sounds, the thuds, the scrape of her bound legs against the floor. As she spoke, the detectives exchanged grim looks. "You said you installed cameras earlier this week?" Layton asked. "Yes," Evelyn replied. I felt something was off. I heard noises from the basement every night. And the way he locked the door." Ramirez nodded. Crow told responding officers that the basement was his private workshop. "But the door your camera caught him entering? We didn't know it existed." Evelyn's breath stalled. "What do you mean?" Ramirez lowered his voice. "There's a concealed panel behind the shelves. Leads to a windowless room. Reinforced walls. Handmade locks. Soundproofing behind the insulation." A chill crawled down Evelyn's spine. "A prison cell." Layton didn't deny it. "A holding room. Or worse." Ramirez closed his notebook. "Crime scene is still processing the area. But we found restraints. Tools modified in ways we don't see often. There's evidence of long-term use." Evelyn closed her eyes as nausea rolled through her. "But how long? How long has he been doing this?" The detectives exchanged another glance, this one heavier. Layton answered quietly. "Longer than we thought." Before Evelyn could ask more, a uniformed officer pulled back the curtain. "Detectives? They need you downstairs. They found something." Layton straightened. "We'll be back." The detectives left in a hurry, leaving Evelyn alone with the hum of fluorescent lights and the rhythmic blip of a heart monitor somewhere nearby. Her thoughts spiraled, the dragging, the muffled cries, Crow's monstrous calm as he handled the girl like cargo. How many others? Minutes felt like hours. Eventually, the curtain opened again, but this time Detective Layton's face looked altered. Hardened. With a deep crease between her brows. Ramirez's knuckles were white around his notebook. Miss Hart, Layton began, her voice lower, there's more we need to tell you. Evelyn gripped the blanket. What did you find? Ramirez exhaled slowly. Behind the maintenance room. Another hidden compartment. Smaller. The hospital room felt suddenly colder. Layton continued, choosing her words carefully. Inside, there were remains. Evelyn's heartbeat stumbled. Remains? Her throat tightened. Human? Layton nodded once. Yes. Evelyn stared at them, waiting, but neither detective spoke. They seemed hesitant, as if the next detail might shatter whatever fragile composure she had left. Tell me, she whispered. It was Ramirez who finally did. We found 11 small skulls. Arranged on shelving. Cleaned. Preserved. Evelyn's mind went blank, the words echoing without meaning, then crashing into her all at once. Children? Yes. Layton's jaw tensed. Children. Evelyn felt the world tilt. For a moment she wasn't sure if she would scream or faint. She pressed a hand to her forehead as the room wavered. How old? Based on initial assessment, Ramirez said quietly, between 6 and 12. A trembling breath escaped her. Her hands had gone numb. Layton added, medical examiners will confirm the timeline, but some of the remains appear decades old. 1980s, maybe early 1990s. Evelyn stared at the floor, her thoughts spiraling like shards of broken glass. He didn't just start this. He'd been doing it since before I was even born. A realization struck her, a horrifying, overwhelming one. If I hadn't installed the camera, if I hadn't checked it tonight, she couldn't finish the sentence. Layton leaned closer, her voice firm but gentle. Listen to me. What you did tonight stopped him. Another woman is alive because of you. And now we know the truth about Crow. We can stop this. All of it. But Evelyn didn't feel heroic. She felt hollow. Unmoored. As if some fundamental assumption about the world had been severed. She whispered, what about the girl? The one from the footage? She's in surgery, Ramirez replied. But she's fighting. She had signs of prolonged restraint. Malnutrition. We won't know more until she wakes up. Evelyn nodded stiffly. Layton pulled a chair closer and sat down. Her presence steadied the air, if only slightly. Miss Hart, when you moved into the house, did Crow say anything unusual? Something that seemed insignificant at the time? Evelyn forced herself to think through the haze. He said the basement was dangerous, she murmured. He said it was full of wiring. And he was always down there. Every afternoon. Sometimes for hours. Ramirez jotted this down. And the smell, Evelyn added quietly. There was a smell in the vents. Like metal. Like rust. Layton's expression darkened further, though she didn't elaborate. Ramirez switched angles. Did you ever see visitors? Anyone entering or leaving the house besides Crow? No. Never. A beat of silence stretched between them. Finally, Layton stood. For now, you need rest. We'll have an officer posted outside your room. Crow is in custody and won't be getting out, but we want you protected until the investigation stabilizes. Evelyn nodded faintly. As the detectives prepared to leave, Evelyn spoke again, her voice barely audible. Detective Layton? The woman paused. Evelyn swallowed the tight knot in her throat. Do you think he planned to kill me too? Leighton didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stepped closer, her eyes softening with something like sorrow. Miss Hart, men like Crow don't stop. Not on their own. You were getting too close. You saw too much. If the police had arrived even a minute later, she didn't finish the thought. Evelyn understood anyway. When the detectives left, the curtain fell shut behind them with a soft whisper. Evelyn stared at the ceiling again, but the lights no longer looked bright, they looked sterile and distant, like stars seen from underwater. She wasn't sure how long she lay like that before exhaustion finally dragged her under. But even as sleep claimed her, she saw the basement again, the concrete floor, the hidden panels, the endless shadows. And behind it all, the shelves. 11 small skulls. Waiting in the dark. Segment 3. Morning crept into the hospital through narrow window slits, diluted and grey, like light forced to pass through a memory. The rain had eased to a fine, cold mist. Seattle's way of pretending the night before had been nothing more than weather. Evelyn woke slowly, surfacing from a dream she couldn't quite remember except for one detail, the sound of something tapping against concrete. When she fully opened her eyes, a shadow shifted near the door. A uniformed officer sat in a plastic chair outside her room, sipping lukewarm coffee. Guard duty. A reminder that even with Crow in custody, the world was no safer than it had been last night. Her ankle throbbed inside the medical boot. She tried adjusting her position but winced as pain flared anew. A nurse arrived shortly after, checking her vitals and leaving behind a small packet of pain medication. Evelyn had barely swallowed the pills when a soft knock came at the door. Detective Leighton stepped in, her coat damp from the drizzle. Ramirez followed, holding a stack of folders thick with overnight findings. You're awake, Leighton said, sounding relieved. How's the pain? Manageable, Evelyn lied. Ramirez perched on the edge of a chair. We have updates. A lot of them. Evelyn braced herself. Leighton began gently. The woman Crow was holding. Her name is Mariah Sandoval. 26. Reported missing 6 days ago. 6 days? Evelyn whispered. He kept her in that room for 6 days? From what the doctors can estimate, yes, Leighton said. She was dehydrated, bruised, but she made it through surgery. She hasn't regained consciousness yet, but the prognosis is cautiously optimistic. Relief flickered through Evelyn, thin, fragile, but real. Ramirez flipped through his folders. Crime scene technicians worked through the night. There's something you should know about that basement, Miss Hart. A chill crept up Evelyn's spine. Ramirez continued, the hidden room where he kept Mariah wasn't his first. Behind another false panel, deeper into the wall cavity, they found evidence of an older space. Dust patterns, aging wood reinforcement, older restraints. It appears he modified and expanded that basement over decades. Evelyn's throat worked soundlessly. Leighton added, Crow knew exactly what he was doing. He reinforced the beams himself, wired extra power lines down there, built his own locks. No one would have heard anything. Ramirez laid one photograph on the foot of her bed, careful but unavoidable. Evelyn didn't want to look, but she did. The picture showed the skulls. 11 of them. Arranged in a perfect half circle against the concrete wall, each resting atop a stained wooden shelf. The smallest was no larger than a grapefruit. Evelyn's stomach twisted violently. She shoved the photograph face down. Ramirez apologized softly and continued, the medical examiner believes the earliest remains date back to 1987. The latest around maybe 2002. He stopped targeting children 2 decades ago, for reasons we are still trying to understand. Leighton's eyes softened at Evelyn's shaken expression. We know this is heavy. But there's more to the investigation than just the past. Evelyn steadied her breath. Why me? Why now? Why did he suddenly take someone again after all those years? Ramirez exchanged a look with Layton. That's one of the questions we're struggling with. Layton slowly sat down. From what we've gathered, Crow's routine changed recently. He stopped leaving the house as often. His grocery trips were irregular. Neighbors reported hearing power tools at odd hours. Ramirez added, "We think he was preparing something." The room was being modified again. New insulation. Fresh chains. The setup was different from his earlier victim rooms. More controlled. Evelyn shuddered. For what? For her? For Mariah? Possibly, Layton said. Possibly for someone else, too. The room wasn't tailored for a child like the older ones. More likely an adult. Evelyn felt the weight of this settle on her chest. For me. Neither detective contradicted her. Layton leaned forward, her expression firm. Whatever his plan was, you disrupted it. And you did it early enough to save a life. Evelyn closed her eyes, letting the truth settle, though it felt jagged and surreal. A search warrant was executed on the rest of the house, Ramirez continued. In his bedroom we found newspaper clippings. Old cases. Missing children from the late 80s and 90s. Most unsolved. Some were local, some as far as Spokane. He paused. He kept them in a binder. Catalogued. Annotated. Evelyn felt sick. Why stop for so long? Why pause? Layton exhaled slowly. Serial predators often have dormant phases. But 20 years is unusually long. Maybe a close call scared him. Maybe age. Maybe he changed his target preference. We won't know until he talks. Has he said anything? Evelyn asked. Ramirez grimaced. Not much of value. He's alternating between silence and ranting about unfinished work. Keeps repeating a phrase, "They were never meant to leave me." Ice ran down Evelyn's spine. He's not taking responsibility, Ramirez continued. But he's not denying anything either. And he refuses to explain the timeline. A long silence stretched between them. Layton finally stood. You'll be interviewed again, but not today. For now, we just need you to rest. But Evelyn felt wide awake with dread. As the detectives turned to leave, Evelyn spoke up. Detective Layton, those skulls. The children. They weren't found anywhere else? Just in the room? Layton paused. Why do you ask? Evelyn swallowed. Because. I want to know if any of their families ever had closure. If they even knew what happened. Layton nodded solemnly. We have a task force working on identifications. It might take months. But yes, we're going to find out who they were. And their families will finally know. Evelyn nodded, though her eyes glistened. Ramirez paused at the doorway. One more thing, your camera footage. It's now one of the most important pieces of evidence in this investigation. Without it, we never would have found Mariah in time. Then they were gone. Evelyn slept for only a few minutes at a time over the next several hours. Every drip from the floor line, every squeak of a cart in the hallway made her jump. Rain ticked faintly against the window as if tapping out a message she couldn't decipher. Around noon, a different officer knocked softly on the frame. Miss Hart? Mariah Sandoval just regained consciousness. The doctors said you can see her if you'd like. Evelyn hesitated. Part of her wanted to curl into herself and avoid anything connected to the night before. But another part, the part that had followed instinct and installed those cameras, knew she had to go. She nodded. The officer wheeled her down the hall, her injured ankle elevated on the leg rest. Every passing doorway seemed to hold its own quiet tragedy, families waiting, medical staff murmuring, lights flickering over people whose lives had been cracked open. Mariah lay in a recovery room, hooked to monitors, her face pale but relaxed, her breathing steady. When Evelyn entered, Mariah's eyes flooded open. Evelyn expected confusion or fear. Instead, Mariah whispered, her voice fragile, You saved me." Evelyn shook her head gently. "I just made a call." Mariah's eyes filled with tears. "I thought he was going to kill me. I thought no one would ever find me." Evelyn felt her own throat tighten. She reached out, resting her hand lightly over Mariah's. "You're safe now," she whispered. "He can't hurt anyone else." Mariah closed her eyes, relief rippling through her face. For the first time since the nightmare began, Evelyn felt something warm, something steady, cutting through the fog of fear. She wasn't the same woman who'd walked into Crow's house 11 days ago. And she never would be again. When Evelyn was returned to her hospital room, Detective Layton was waiting. She held a small sealed evidence bag. "I wanted you to see this," she said quietly. Inside was Evelyn's small hallway camera, the one that caught everything. "We'll be returning your belongings as soon as they've been processed," Layton said. "But this changed everything." Evelyn stared at it, the tiny device that had witnessed the truth no one else could see. Layton stepped closer. "Miss Hart, you should know. Crow has been charged with 11 counts of homicide, 1 count of attempted homicide, 1 count of kidnapping, and multiple counts related to the holding room. And that's just the beginning." Evelyn didn't speak. The weight of it was too large, too vast to absorb. Layton's voice softened. "You didn't just escape last night. You ended a 40-year nightmare." Evelyn closed her eyes, letting the words steady her. "Not a victim. Not merely a survivor. A witness. A catalyst. The reason the truth finally surfaced." Outside, rain began again, soft, persistent, cleansing. And for the first time since stepping into Crow's house, Evelyn felt something close to peace. Story 2, The Eye Behind the Wall. Part 1, Segment 1. Portland's winter rain had a personality of its own, thin, needling, persistent. It didn't fall so much as cling, coating everything in a perpetual sheen that made the world feel a little quieter, a little more uncertain. On Alberta Street, the old craftsman house Noah Bennett had just rented seemed to be dissolving into the mist. The wooden porch sagged slightly, and the scent of wet cedar and rot lingered in the air like a half-spoken warning. Noah stepped inside with a stack of books pressed against his chest, his only comfort. Working at Ash and Ink Bookstore had shaped him into a creature of routine and solitude, someone who preferred the company of dusty crime novels to human unpredictability. This rental was supposed to be the start of something steadier, a place to write his first manuscript, to save money, to breathe. But even on the first night, there had been something off. The house had a way of settling too loudly. The walls creaked at inconsistent intervals, like a restless sleeper turning over and over. And the smell, the ever-present odor of decaying pine, was sharpest in the bathroom, almost chemical, like something soaked deep into the wood. Still, it was Portland. Old houses creaked, old wood rotted. He told himself not to be dramatic. The landlord, Harold Grayson, had seemed polite enough when showing the place. Quiet house. Good bones. Just me downstairs, you on the main floor. He had said it while leaning heavily on his cane, his pale blue eyes sharp behind thick glasses. "I don't bother tenants. You won't even know I exist." It was meant to be reassuring. It wasn't. Noah tried to shake off the unease as he headed toward the bathroom to shower after his late shift. The bookstore's closing hours left him drained, and the prospect of hot water was the easiest way to reset his brain. He flicked on the bathroom light. The bulb flickered once, humming, before settling into a weak, yellow glow. The bathroom felt colder than the rest of the house, like the window had been left open. But when he checked, the pane was sealed shut, the frame swollen from years of moisture. He peeled off his clothes, turned on the water, and let the steam begin to cloud the mirror. The smell of damp pine thickened. He rubbed his eyes and stepped into the shower. 5 minutes in, he felt it, the unmistakable sensation that someone was watching him. It was absurd. He lived alone. Harold's room downstairs didn't connect to the bathroom, there was no shared vent, no open window. The only opening in the room was the small wall grate above the toilet, painted over so many times it was practically fused shut. And yet, the feeling persisted. Crawling. Observing. He slid open the shower curtain just enough to check the room. Nothing moved. No doors opened. The grate was still there, harmless, dusty, benign. He shut off the water and stepped onto the mat, goosebumps rising on his arms. He wiped the mirror. Then he froze. Behind him, reflected in the fogged glass, was something impossible to ignore. A small dark patch in the bathroom wall, just above eye level. Perfectly circular. Too smooth to be a crack. Too even to be damage. A hole. Noah turned slowly. The spot wasn't obvious at first glance. It blended into the shadows near the tiles. He leaned closer. The hole was no larger than a dime. The edges were clean. Artificial. A peephole. His stomach tightened as the implications hit him. This wasn't structural damage. This wasn't accidental. Someone had made that hole, with purpose. He stepped closer, heart pounding. The air near the tiny opening was colder, almost draft-like. He crouched and pressed his ear toward it, listening. For a moment, he heard nothing. Then, a very faint, almost imperceptible, a sound. A slow, rhythmic creaking. A shift of weight on old wooden boards. Someone was standing on the other side. Watching. Noah stumbled backward, nearly slipping on the wet tiles. His breath caught in his throat. He grabbed a towel, wrapped it around himself, and backed out of the bathroom, slamming the door shut as if that might erase what he'd seen. His mind spun. He needed context. Explanation. Anything that didn't involve the truth clawing at his nerves. He forced himself into the hallway and reached for his phone. His thumb hovered over the keypad. Should he text a friend? Call the police? Tell the landlord? The landlord. His stomach dropped. Harold lived directly below. Noah slowly turned his head toward the floor. The wood beneath his feet felt different now, less like a surface, more like a barrier between him and something patient, quiet, waiting. He heard a faint tap. Like a cane hitting the bottom stair. Then another. Slow, deliberate. Noah backed away, breath hitching. He had to check the bathroom again, just to be sure, just to confirm that the hole was real and not a trick of exhaustion. He opened the door. The smell seemed stronger now. He flicked the light switch. The bulb buzzed. He approached the hole with shaking hands. His fingers trembled as he leaned in. The hole wasn't just drilled, it had a very thin, almost invisible metal ring around the inside. Like a manufactured component. Something designed for a camera lens or a micro-audio device. Then, as he watched, the tiniest reflection moved inside the darkness. A glint. A blink of red. A recording light. Noah stumbled backward so quickly he tripped over the bath mat and hit the floor. His towel fell from his waist, but embarrassment was the furthest thing from his mind. The camera inside the wall moved, tiny, mechanical, adjusting focus. Someone was filming him. Someone had been filming him every time he stepped into this bathroom. The nausea came in a wave. He scrambled to his feet, grabbed his clothes, and hurried into his bedroom, slamming the door. His breaths came in sharp, uneven bursts. He felt his ribs contract painfully, his vision narrowing. He needed to get out of the house. Now. As he dressed, he heard something that stopped him cold. A floorboard creaking just outside his room. Then another, closer. The slow tap of a cane. Harold. Noah swallowed hard, every nerve tightening. He moved toward the bedroom window, fingers fumbling with the latch. he could climb out, drop to the side yard. It wasn't far. Another creak. Right outside the door this time. "Noah?" Harold's voice rasped through the wood, strangely calm. "Everything all right in there?" Noah froze. The friendly landlord tone was gone, replaced by something flat, measured, almost rehearsed. "Why was the bathroom light turning on and off?" Harold asked softly. "Are you fixing something?" "Fixing." The word felt sinister now, twisted. Noah kept silent. A pause. Then the cane tapped once, right against the door. "Open up," Harold said, voice low. "We should talk about privacy concerns." A shiver ran down Noah's spine. He unlatched the window, pushed it up as quietly as he could. And the cane slammed into the door with surprising force. "You need to open this door, son." Harold's voice cracked into something feral. Noah didn't think. He climbed halfway out the window. Below, rain-blackened bushes waited. It wouldn't be a pleasant fall, but it was better than staying inside. Another slam. The doorframe groaned. "Noah!" The voice was wrong now. No longer polite. No longer elderly. Something hungry lived beneath it. He pushed himself the rest of the way out, fell hard into the wet shrubs, and scrambled to his feet. He didn't look back. He didn't breathe. He ran. Behind him, the house creaked once more, louder this time, like it was exhaling. As if Harold Grayson was already moving after him. Already planning the next move. Already deciding what to do with a tenant who discovered the truth. Segment 2. The rain was heavier by the time Noah sprinted down Alberta Street, soaking through his clothes in seconds. The cold felt electric against his skin, driving him onward. The houses blurred past, dimly lit porches, sagging roofs, Christmas lights that flickered in the wind like faint distress beacons. Portland's winter nights always carried an air of loneliness, but tonight the silence felt predatory. He didn't know where he was going, he just knew he needed distance, blocks, miles, states, between himself and the Craftsman house. His shoes slapped against wet pavement, breath tearing in and out of his chest. He kept glancing over his shoulder, expecting at any moment to see Harold limping after him, cane tapping in the dark, that strange, controlled voice calling his name again. But the street remained empty. He forced himself to slow near a corner, leaning against the cold metal of a mailbox. The rain plastered his hair to his forehead, trickling into his eyes. Everything felt unreal, like stepping out of a nightmare only to find the world still warped around the edges. He fumbled for his phone with trembling hands. Call 911. Just do it. But a spike of hesitation hit him like a punch. He had no proof on him. The hole in the wall, the blinking light, the shifting camera, he had seen it, yes, but he had nothing recorded. No photos. No video. His panic had driven him out of the house before he'd even had a chance to think. And then a more chilling thought struck him. Had Harold already removed the device? The man was ex-police. He would know how to clean a scene fast. 10 minutes might be all he needed. Rain dripped from Noah's chin as he looked at his phone screen. Dialing 911 suddenly felt fragile. Too dependent on trusting that the world was rational, fair, responsive. And he didn't feel connected to that kind of world anymore. A car passed slowly, the only other movement on the street. He flinched instinctively, eyes narrowing, tension coiling in his shoulders. But it was just a rideshare driver cruising the neighborhood. Noah lowered his phone, breathing hard. His thoughts spun. I need someone to come with me. A witness. A safe place. Anywhere but home. He knew only a handful of people in Portland. He kept to himself. Most co-workers remained acquaintances, not friends. Only one person came to mind who might actually answer this late, Marcy, the assistant manager at the bookstore, who lived 5 blocks away. He typed quickly. Can I come over? Something bad happened at my place. Please. Urgent. He hit send. The 3 dots appeared almost immediately. You okay? Come now. I'll unlock the door. A wave of relief washed over him. He pocketed his phone and began walking fast toward Killingsworth Street, hugging the edges of the sidewalk. The storm swallowed sound, turning his own footsteps muffled and uncertain. Every now and then, he still glanced behind him. Just in case. Marcy's house was a small, narrow bungalow painted teal, with a porch light shaped like a lantern. When Noah stepped under it, dripping, she opened the door with wide eyes. Noah, holy crap, what happened to you? Can I come in? He said breathlessly. She stepped aside instantly. Of course. Warm air hit him as he crossed the threshold, along with the smell of chamomile tea and cinnamon. Marcy grabbed a towel from a chair and thrust it toward him. Sit. Talk to me. What happened? Noah rubbed the water from his face. For a moment, he didn't even know how to form the words. The truth felt unreal coming from his own mouth. There's a hole in my bathroom wall, he said quietly. A peephole. And a camera behind it. Marcy blinked. What? And I heard him, Noah whispered. On the other side. I think he's been watching me. Your landlord? Yes. Marcy sat slowly, processing. Are you absolutely sure? You weren't tired or? I saw the lens move. His voice cracked. It blinked red. Her expression hardened instantly. We are calling the police. I don't know. Noah shook his head. What if he removes it before they get there? He used to be a cop, Marcy. A detective. He knows how to hide things. He'll hear them coming. Marcy's jaw tightened. Then we go together. We go back and take pictures. You need proof. Noah stared at her. Brave wasn't the right word, Marcy was practical. Level-headed. She wasn't one for drama, which made her resolve even more grounding. You'd come with me? He asked quietly. Absolutely. No one should be dealing with that alone. A small surge of strength returned to his chest. Marcy grabbed her coat and keys. We'll go by my car, she said. Park down the block, so he doesn't know we're there. Noah nodded, and the two stepped back into the rain. The neighborhood looked different now, darker, sharper, every house a potential pair of eyes. Marcy drove slowly, headlights cutting through the storm. When they reached the block, she parked near the corner, engines still running. The Craftsman house loomed ahead, barely visible beneath the low-hanging branches and mist. The porch light was off now. The windows were dark. Is he asleep? Marcy whispered. Noah studied the building with a sinking feeling. He never sleeps early. They waited. A minute. 2. Rain tapping on the windshield. Okay, Marcy murmured at last. We go in through your window again. Quiet as possible. They stepped out into the cold. The street felt abandoned, as though the storm had scared off any witnesses. Noah led Marcy around the side yard, where he'd fallen into the bushes. The branches still bore the imprint. His heart hammered. You okay? She whispered. He nodded. She boosted him up first. He gripped the sill, hoisted himself, and slipped through the partly opened window into his bedroom. Marcy handed him her phone for a flashlight before climbing in after him. The room was dark. Too dark. Noah froze. Marcy, he whispered. I left the curtain open when I jumped out. The curtain was now closed. The air felt wrong, heavier, disturbed, like someone had been there recently. Marcy sensed it too. She put a hand on his arm. Stay close. They crept into the hallway, moving as silently as they could. Noah led her to the bathroom, each step making his heartbeat spike. He reached for the switch. "Wait," Marcy whispered. "He might hear it." She took her phone, turned on the flashlight, and held it low to the ground. They entered the bathroom. The smell hit them immediately. Stronger. Raw. Almost metallic. Noah's stomach twisted. He pointed toward the wall. "There." Marcy knelt first, peeling back the towel he'd thrown earlier. Her light scanned the area. She inhaled sharply. "Noah." He crouched beside her and saw it. The hole was there. But now the inside was empty. No lens. No metal ring. No red light. Just darkness. Harold had removed it. Cleanly. Perfectly. Marcy's jaw clenched. "We should have called the cops first." Noah tried to speak but couldn't. His pulse roared in his ears. Then Marcy's light stopped on something else, something that didn't belong. Scratches. Fresh scratches along the outside edge of the hole, like fingernail marks. New, uneven, desperate. "Noah," she whispered. "Those weren't here before, were they?" "No." "And that smell," she swallowed. "It's stronger inside the hole. Like something old." Noah leaned closer. A floorboard creaked somewhere behind them. Both froze. Another creak. Closer this time. Marcy stood slowly, turning her phone light toward the doorway. "Noah," she mouthed silently. The hallway was pitch black. Then, a soft tapping sound echoed upward through the floor. A cane. Harold was awake. No, more than awake. He was moving. Walking. Directly beneath them. Noah's breath hitched. "We need to leave. Now." Marcy grabbed his hand. "Window. Go." They stepped into the hallway. And a shadow moved at the far end. Not fully visible. Not clear. But tall. Still. Watching. Marcy's fingers tightened around Noah's. He swallowed, unable to make a sound. Then the shadow shifted, just enough to reveal a faint glint of metal. The end of a cane. Segment 3. For a moment, the world held its breath. Rain hammered the roof. A draft blew through the hallway, carrying with it the damp, rotting scent of the old house. Noah felt the cold seep through his ribs as he stared down the shadowed corridor, where Harold Grayson stood just beyond the threshold of visibility, barely outlined in the dark. The faint glint of metal, a polished cane tip, was unmistakable. Marcy's grip tightened around Noah's fingers. She didn't breathe. Didn't blink. The house groaned softly, as if shifting around them. Then Harold spoke. "Noah," he said quietly, almost gently. "You came back." The tone chilled Noah more than the storm outside. It wasn't angry. It wasn't surprised. It was pleased, as if he'd expected this, counted on it. Like a fisherman speaking to a fish that had tried, foolishly, to escape the net. Marcy stepped slightly in front of Noah, protective despite her shaking hands. "Stay back," she said, voice low. "We are calling the police." Harold chuckled. The sound was soft, breathy, ancient, more like an exhale than laughter. "I think you'll find they won't be coming," he murmured. "Not for a story with no evidence." He tapped the cane once against the floor. The sound echoed up through the bones of the house. "Especially when everything was removed the moment you ran." Noah's heart stopped. "He knows. He knows we saw. He knows why we returned." Marcy raised the phone as if to record, but Harold stepped forward just enough for the dim light to touch his face. His eyes gleamed, dead and wet, behind his glasses. "I'm disappointed, Noah," he whispered. "I told you I keep to myself. I take care of this house. All its compartments. Noah felt the word like a hand closing around his throat. Compartments. He remembered the creaking behind the walls. The faint voices he thought were plumbing. The hollow sound the bathroom tiles made when he pressed them. This wasn't just a bathroom with a peephole. This entire house had been prepared. Marcy took Noah's arm. "We are leaving." "Move." Harold smiled. "I don't think so." He lifted his cane and slammed it into the wall beside him. The old wood splintered. Something behind the plaster rattled. Marcy pulled Noah backward toward the bedroom window. Harold didn't rush. He moved slowly, deliberately, dragging the cane as he walked, thunk, slide, like a predator savoring the chase. "You shouldn't be wandering the hallways," he murmured. "Not when you don't know what's behind them." They reached the bedroom. Marcy shoved Noah toward the window. "Go." Noah pulled himself onto the sill, rain blasting his face through the open gap. Behind him, Marcy stood blocking the doorway, holding her phone like a weapon. Harold's silhouette filled the hallway now, his outline clearer. "No need for dramatics," he said. "I only want a conversation." "Stay away!" Marcy shouted. He tilted his head. "You have no idea what you two interrupted tonight." Noah's hands slipped on the wet sill. He turned back to help Marcy climb up. But Harold stepped into the room. He wasn't limping anymore. The cane was still in his hand, but his movements were smooth, controlled, disturbingly agile for a 64-year-old man. Marcy's breath hitched. "Noah, run!" Harold swung the cane at her head. She ducked. The cane smashed into the wall, ripping through the plaster, sending dust and fragments across the floor. Noah leapt back inside instinctively. "Marcy!" She backed away quickly, grabbing a lamp from the nightstand. Harold advanced, tapping the cane once against the floor. "You're in my house," he said quietly. "Do you understand the boundaries here?" Marcy's hands shook, but she held her ground. "We are leaving. Right now." He smiled faintly. "Leaving isn't up to you." Noah grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the window. "We jumped together. Now." Harold lunged. His cane scraped the floor, then rose sharply, swinging toward Noah's ribs. Marcy reacted first. She hurled the lamp at Harold's arm. The bulb shattered against him, exploding in sparks. Harold hissed, more animal than human, stumbling for the first time. Marcy shoved Noah toward the window. "Go." He climbed out, gripping the frame, rainwater stinging his eyes. He turned, offering his hand to Marcy. She grabbed it. Harold, regaining his balance, raised the cane high. "No!" Noah shouted. Marcy dove out the window. Their hands slipped apart as she fell into the bushes below with a painful thud. Harold's cane slammed into the sill where her head had been a second earlier, splintering the wood. Noah scrambled down after her, hitting the wet ground hard. His knees buckled, but he grabbed Marcy's arm and pulled her up. "Are you okay?" She wheezed, but nodded. "Go. Go." They ran. Behind them, the window creaked, and Harold's face appeared in the frame, rain mixing with the shadows across his glasses. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply watched. Unblinking. Rain dripped from his chin like a second face melting off him. Marcy and Noah raced toward the car. She fumbled for her keys, breath ragged. "He's coming," Noah whispered. But when they looked back, Harold was already gone from the window. A dark shape passed behind the curtains inside the room. Then, the porch light flickered on. Then off. Then on again, cycling in a deliberate, slow rhythm. Almost like Morse code. Marcy jerked her keys from her pocket. "Get in!" They dove into the car. She locked the doors immediately. Noah pressed his forehead to the window, searching the house. Every instinct screamed that Harold was going to burst through the front door, charging at them with unnatural speed. But he didn't. The house remained still. Lights off. Porch dark. Nothing moving. Marcy started the engine with trembling fingers. "Noah," she whispered. "Say something. Are you okay?" He stared at the house. "I think he wanted us to find the hole," he murmured. Marcy swallowed. "Why would he?" "Because he already moved everything," Noah said quietly. He wasn't scared. He wasn't surprised. He was prepared. Marcy nodded once, eyes wide, terrified. "Then we call the police right now." Noah slowly tore his gaze from the dark craftsman house. "No," he said. "We drive to the station ourselves. We go in person. He can intercept calls. But he can't stop us from walking into a precinct." Marcy put the car into drive, hands white-knuckled on the wheel. As the car rolled forward, Noah looked through the back window one last time. On the second floor, the bedroom light flicked on. Just for a second. Enough to illuminate Harold's shadow standing perfectly still, facing the street. Watching them leave. Not frantic. Not panicked. Not rushing. Calm. Composed. Calculating. As the house vanished into the storm, Noah felt the truth settle in his bones like cold water. Harold hadn't lost control tonight. He hadn't been caught off guard. He had simply let them go. Because he already knew, without a doubt, that they'd be back. Part 2 is Segment 1. The drive to the police station felt longer than it should have. Rain streaked across the windshield in long, trembling veins, blurring the passing streetlights into smears of yellow. The wipers slapped in an erratic rhythm, almost matching Noah's heartbeat. Marcy kept both hands locked at the 10 and 2 position, her knuckles white, her breath sharp and deliberate. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. The quiet inside the car felt unnatural, stretched thin between adrenaline spikes and unspoken fear. Finally, Marcy exhaled shakily. "I need you to tell me again that what we saw was real." Noah stared out the window, watching the city glide past like a haunted painting. "The camera was real," he said. "The hole. The scratches. The smell. The way the lens moved. I didn't imagine it." "And his reaction," Marcy said quietly. "That wasn't confusion. That wasn't a normal old man." Noah nodded. He wasn't surprised. He was almost rehearsed. The rain intensified, drumming the roof like hundreds of fingers tapping in unison. "Do you think he removed the camera in the time it took you to run?" Marcy asked. "Yes," Noah whispered. "He knew the house better than I do. He probably had everything routed through the walls. And when I left, he had time. And when we came back..." Noah's stomach twisted. He'd already cleaned it. "It's like he expected me to return." They exchanged a glance, both understanding the implication. Harold wasn't improvising. Harold had a system. The car turned off Alberta Street and headed south toward the precinct. Noah felt tension creeping up his neck. The city lights flickered through the rain, forming long shadows on the dashboard. "You think he followed us?" he asked suddenly. Marcy checked the mirror. "I don't see anyone." The road behind them was empty except for the blurred glow of streetlights. But Noah didn't feel watched by headlights. He felt watched by memory. Every time he blinked, he saw Harold's face in the bedroom window, expressionless, unwavering, as if he were already calculating the next 10 steps. Marcy reached over and squeezed Noah's arm briefly. "We are almost there," she said. 5 more minutes." Noah nodded, trying to breathe normally. He needed to keep his thoughts organized, focus, not spiral. But a deeper dread curled in his chest. He couldn't shake the feeling that the police station wasn't going to be the sanctuary he hoped for. They reached the precinct, a squat concrete building with harsh fluorescent lights around the entrance. Marcy pulled into the parking lot and shut off the engine. "Okay," she said, "we are going in together. You tell them everything. I'll back you up." Noah took a deep breath, feeling rainwater still dripping from his hair into his collar. "Right." They stepped out of the car. The storm immediately swallowed them, wind slicing between the buildings. As they crossed the lot, the automatic doors opened with a mechanical sigh. Warm, sterile air washed over them. Inside, 2 officers manned the front desk. One was older, heavy-set, scrolling through a monitor. The other, a younger man with sharp features, glanced up, noticing their soaked clothes. "Rough night?" he asked. Marcy stepped forward. "We need to report something. It's urgent." The younger officer straightened. "What's happening?" "It's complicated," Noah said. "I found a peephole in my bathroom wall. There was a camera behind it. The landlord, he removed it before we could get proof." The older officer looked up finally, expression unreadable. "Where do you live?" "Alberta Street," Noah said. "Craftsman House. Owned by a man named Harold Grayson." The older officer paused for half a second, just long enough to register that he recognized the name. Noah saw the shift. It wasn't curiosity. It was something else. The younger officer noticed it too. "You know him?" The older man cleared his throat. "Everyone on the force knew Grayson. Homicide detective. Retired early, injury on duty." He frowned slightly. "Didn't know he was renting rooms." Noah swallowed. "He's watching tenants. Recording them." Marcy stepped closer to the desk. "There was a camera behind the wall. And he attacked us when we came back to get evidence." The younger officer's eyes narrowed. "You were attacked?" "He swung a cane at us," Marcy said. "Hard enough to break the wall. We barely got out." The room grew heavier. The older officer rubbed his jaw. "Look. Grayson has a reputation. But if he cleaned up the scene already? What does that matter?" Noah interrupted. He heard the desperation in his own voice. "There was a camera. There was a hole. He was watching me shower. He chased us. We believe you," the younger officer said, cutting him off. He shot a glance at his partner. "We'll send someone to check it out." Noah exhaled shakily. Relief threatened to collapse him. But the older officer added quietly, "Before we do, you should know something important." Noah's breath stilled. "He's not just a retired cop," the officer murmured. "He was internal affairs for 15 years. Investigated other officers. And he won almost every case he touched." Marcy frowned. "Meaning?" "Meaning," the officer said slowly, "he knows every loophole in the book. If he's involved in anything messy, he'll know exactly how to hide it. He'll know how to make it look like a misunderstanding." Noah felt a cold tremor crawl down his spine. "We need to send someone," Marcy insisted. "Tonight." "We will," the younger officer said, already reaching for a form. "Let's get your statements first." Noah answered questions. Address. Timeline. Descriptions. Every detail he could recall. Marcy corroborated everything. The younger officer typed rapidly, expression focused. But the older officer kept watching Noah. Not suspiciously. Warily. Finally, the younger officer said, "We are sending a patrol car right now. 2 units actually." Noah nodded, exhausted but hopeful. The officers walked away to handle the dispatch. Marcy exhaled and sat beside him. "It's okay," she whispered. "They are on it." Noah leaned forward, head in his hands. He's not going to let them find anything. We'll see. After several minutes, the elder officer returned. He handed Noah a small card. Just in case, he said. This is my private line. If anything happens, anything at all, you call me. Noah took the card. Thank you. The officer hesitated. Then he leaned in slightly. And be careful, he said. Because Grayson, he doesn't make mistakes. Noah's heart stopped. The officer's gaze flicked toward the exit doors. He was in here an hour ago. Noah's blood went cold. What? He came to file a noise complaint. Said a tenant was acting strange. Breaking things in the house. Possibly unstable. Noah felt the room tilt. He described you, the officer said quietly. Marcy's hand flew to her mouth. He came here first, Noah whispered. The officer nodded grimly. Whatever he's doing, he started preparing long before you showed up tonight. Before Noah could respond, the station doors slid open behind them. A gust of cold rain swept in. And a tall figure in a dark hood stepped just inside the foyer. A dripping cane in one hand. Watching Noah. Not approaching. Just watching. Harold Grayson. Segment 2. Harold stood by the sliding doors of the precinct, water dripping from his coat and cane, forming small puddles on the linoleum. His glasses reflected the harsh fluorescent lights above, turning his eyes into tiny, emotionless mirrors. The officers immediately stiffened, hand movements freezing mid-gesture. Noah and Marcy froze too, caught between disbelief and fear. Noah Bennett? Harold's voice cut the air like a blade, calm but unmistakably sharp. Is that you? The younger officer stepped forward instinctively, hand hovering near his holster. Sir, you need to leave. This is a police station. Harold tilted his head slightly, a faint, almost imperceptible smile brushing his thin lips. I'm here because of concern, he said. His gaze shifted to Noah. Concern for your well-being. Noah's stomach turned over. Concern. That word was like poison in Harold's mouth. Every instinct screamed that there was nothing benign in his presence. Marcy grabbed Noah's arm, pulling him behind her. He's dangerous, she hissed. We need to get officers, now. The older officer stepped forward, shielding them slightly. Harold, you need to step back and leave the premises immediately. Harold didn't move. He simply tapped his cane once, deliberately, on the tile. Thunk. The sound echoed, unnervingly loud in the high-ceilinged lobby. I've already considered every possible scenario. You misunderstand me if you think I act without caution. Misunderstand? Noah's voice cracked. You've been watching me. Watching me shower. You attacked us when we came back. Harold's smile widened ever so slightly. I observe. It is not an attack. You misinterpret. Humans are unpredictable, you see. And some, well, they require guidance. Marcy's hand shook as she raised her phone. You're under arrest, she shouted. We've already reported everything. Harold's expression remained serene. He took a slow step closer, the cane tapping softly with each move. Reported? To whom? Your statements? To what, precisely? A system that I have spent decades understanding? I fear you overestimate the power of a few words in a room filled with people who do not see beyond the surface. Noah felt a wave of terror sweep over him. He couldn't breathe. Every step Harold took seemed deliberate, precise, surgical. He wasn't just a man, he was a predator in plain sight, in his element, calculating his next move. The younger officer raised his voice, firm, authoritative. Step back. This is your final warning. Harold tilted his head again, the faintest hum of amusement escaping him. Warnings? My dear boy, threats are unnecessary. I do not intend to engage in conflict here. Not yet. But, he paused, his gaze fixed on Noah. You must understand, some things cannot be left unchecked. Some errors must be corrected. Noah's mind reeled. Errors? Me? This isn't about. Harold raised a finger, cutting him off. It is about awareness. About recognition. You trespass in ways you cannot begin to comprehend. And yet, you were careful, weren't you? Almost meticulous. Almost daring. Marcy squeezed Noah's arm, whispering, we need to leave. Now. Before anyone could act, Harold turned slowly, his cane dragging against the tiles, leaving a faint streak. He made his way to the exit doors, not fast, but deliberate, unhurried. Noah blinked, confused. He expected Harold to strike, to attack, to somehow impose terror directly. Instead, he simply walked out. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. The older officer muttered, "He's gone." Noah's pulse didn't slow. "Gone," he echoed. "How?" He was just... Before he could finish, the sliding doors opened again. The storm outside had intensified, rain blowing horizontally across the concrete steps. And then a single car's headlights caught the precinct from the street. It was Harold's Buick, headlights piercing the downpour. Marcy's hand flew to her mouth. "He's following us." The officers immediately mobilized. "Stay here," the younger one shouted. "We'll handle this." Noah tried to argue, but his words caught in his throat. Marcy grabbed his hand again. "We can't wait. We can't trust him." The older officer glanced at Noah and Marcy, his expression tight. "If he leaves the precinct, we lose the advantage of control. You need to stay inside. It's safer here." Noah shook his head. "He'll track us. He knows exactly what we're doing. He's calculating every move." Marcy's eyes were wide, fear mirrored in every line of her face. "We need proof. Photos. Evidence. Anything. If we stay passive, he wins." The officers hesitated, tension rising. Every creak of the precinct, every muffled thunderclap from the storm, felt magnified. The room seemed smaller, more oppressive, as if the storm outside and Harold's presence were compressing the air into suffocating density. Then, louder, sharper, the headlights on the street shifted. Harold's car had moved, positioning itself directly in front of the precinct, engine idling. Noah's stomach dropped. He could see Harold behind the wheel, glasses fogged, eyes fixed on the building. Calm. Calculating. Watching. The younger officer's hand went to the radio. "Units! We need backup on Alberta Street. Immediate response." Noah's breath hitched. "He's right outside." Marcy gripped his arm. "We can't just sit here. He'll find a way in. He always does." The older officer nodded slowly. "All right. Listen carefully. You two need to come with me. There's a secure room upstairs. We can get statements, evidence, anything, away from the public. But you stay quiet. Do not provoke him." Noah swallowed hard. His chest felt tight, every nerve screaming that Harold's calm exterior hid something far more dangerous than anyone realized. As they moved toward the stairwell, a sound cut through the storm's roar, sharp, deliberate, unmistakable. The metallic click of a cane against pavement. Noah froze. Marcy gripped his arm tighter. "He's outside." They reached the stairs, the officers moving swiftly, shielding them as best as they could. Upstairs, the secure room awaited, small and windowless, lit by harsh fluorescent light that made shadows dance along the walls. Noah and Marcy sat, drenched, trembling. The officers began processing the immediate threat, radios crackling, backup en route. but Noah's mind was elsewhere. The thought that refused to leave. Harold had been preparing for this moment, every observation, every camera, every micro-listening device, planned meticulously, anticipating every action. And now, for the first time, Noah realized the terrifying truth: Harold wasn't just a voyeur. He was a predator who had already studied them, understood them, and was waiting for the exact moment to strike again. Noah's pulse pounded, but one thought crystallized, cold and unyielding. He wouldn't stop. And neither could the police, at least, not without something Harold hadn't accounted for. Outside, the storm raged, and the sound of a cane striking asphalt, slow, deliberate, echoed through the night, a heartbeat, a countdown, a promise. Segment 3. The secure room was cold and sterile, fluorescent light bouncing harshly off the pale walls. Noah and Marcy huddled together, wet clothes clinging to their bodies, every muscle taut. The older officer closed the door behind them, double-checking the locks. Outside, the storm raged, masking the faint, deliberate tapping of a cane against wet pavement, a rhythmic, unnerving cadence that Noah felt in his chest as much as he heard with his ears. "They're sending a patrol unit immediately to your house," the officer said. "We'll get evidence, documentation, everything." Noah tried to exhale, but his chest constricted. He knows we're here. He's smart, he'll. "Stop," Marcy said firmly. "We can't think like that. Not yet. Just focus." But Noah couldn't. He could see the craftsman house, dark and rotting, feel Harold's gaze pressing through walls, imagine the countless hours of surveillance, the meticulous recording of tenants' lives. Everything he had felt since the peephole, the nausea, the panic, the cold realization, was crashing back in a tidal wave. And then, the unmistakable sound of a key turning in a lock. Noah froze. The officers tensed. Every instinct screamed that it was impossible. Harold was outside. They had locked the precinct. And yet, the faint click, deliberate, mechanical. The younger officer's hand went to his holster, eyes scanning every corner. "Stay calm," he murmured. "It's probably the outer door. Could be a janitor." But Noah's mind screamed a single word: impossible. And then came the first scream, not from outside, but from the monitor room adjacent to theirs. A sharp, high-pitched sound, muffled yet terrifying. It was the sound of something being broken, metal against tile, a chair overturned. The officers bolted for the door. Noah and Marcy followed, adrenaline cutting through exhaustion. The hallway was chaos. The younger officer's radio crackled as he called out for backup. Rainwater had tracked through the automatic doors, slicking the linoleum. And in the midst of it, a dark shape darted. Harold. He moved faster than humanly plausible, the cane in one hand, his body poised, calculating. He wasn't rushing, but the precision of his movements was terrifying. Every step, every gesture seemed rehearsed, predatory. "Freeze!" the officer shouted, gun drawn. Harold stopped. He tilted his head, smile curling faintly. "You misunderstand. I am not the threat here," he said softly. His eyes flicked to Noah. "You are the one who intrudes." "No!" Noah shouted. "You attacked us." "I observed." "I corrected," Harold said simply. His gaze swept the room, as if noting every potential weakness in seconds. "And yet, you survived." The younger officer raised his weapon. "Step back, now!" Harold's eyes glinted behind his glasses. In a single motion, he raised his cane and swung, not at anyone, but against the wall. The impact reverberated with a hollow crack, a sound so deep, so unnatural, that Noah instinctively ducked. From inside the wall came a creak, then a small section of plaster gave way, revealing something hidden. Cameras. Microphones. Wires that ran through the entire building. Every corner, every hallway, he had built the precinct into a map of observation, a web of silent tracking. Noah's stomach churned. "He's been here before," he whispered. "Watching. Preparing. Marcy's hands shook as she raised her phone to capture evidence. Harold's gaze followed the movement, calculating. He said, almost conversationally, proof. Proof is comforting to the timid. But it is never enough. The officers shouted, drawing their weapons, shouting commands. Harold didn't flinch. He simply tapped his cane against the floor, a thunk, 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 each strike a heartbeat, a countdown. Suddenly, the building's security system flickered, lights blazed, alarms wailing. The older officer swore, radio crackling. Harold's eyes flicked toward the chaos, almost impressed. This, he said quietly, is the challenge. Noah realized what he had feared all along. Harold had designed contingencies. Escape routes, traps, contingencies. Every move they made, he had anticipated. Every countermeasure, planned. And yet, tonight, something had changed. He had underestimated two people who refused to obey fear alone. The younger officer lunged forward, attempting to subdue Harold. The retired detective moved with terrifying precision, swinging the cane in arcs that forced the officer back. A single well-placed strike sent the gun clattering across the floor. Noah! Marcy shouted. Noah saw his chance. He grabbed a heavy fire extinguisher from the wall and swung at Harold's legs. The impact threw Harold off balance. He stumbled but didn't fall. In that instant, the officers regrouped, seizing him by the arms. Harold resisted, but the sheer numbers forced him to the floor. The storm outside raged like a beast, rain hammering against the building as officers handcuffed Harold. His expression never changed, calm, almost serene, as if the entire struggle had been an exercise, a test. Noah sank to the floor, chest heaving. Marcy crouched beside him, arms around him. The older officer spoke quietly, almost to himself. You don't understand what we've just contained. His, meticulous. Obsessed. Years of training, years of observing. If he hadn't been discovered. Noah felt bile rise. He had glimpsed the extent of Harold's preparations, every peephole, every camera, every wire hidden behind walls. And now the man who had terrorized him for days, weeks, possibly years, was restrained. Backup arrived. Officers scoured the precinct and the surrounding area. Every camera, every device Harold had installed, was documented. A full investigation began. And finally, after hours of testimony, evidence gathering, and frantic nerves, Noah and Marcy were escorted home, under police protection. The Craftsman house on Alberta Street sat in darkness as they approached. Rain still fell, but the night felt different now. The weight of fear was still there, but it was tempered by a grim sense of victory. Inside, police had discovered a horrifying trove, hidden cameras throughout the house, of surveillance footage, dozens of personal items, hair, clothing, from prior tenants, meticulously catalogued. The officers who had worked the case before whispered among themselves, eyes wide. He's a master at hiding in plain sight, one said. And Noah knew the truth. Harold Grayson had been planning, observing, and waiting for years. He had lived in the shadows of trust, using knowledge, procedure, and patience as weapons. Now, finally, justice was beginning. But Noah knew something haunting would linger forever, the certainty that, for every detail uncovered, Harold had already anticipated, already controlled, already prepared. Even in confinement, Harold's calm presence suggested he wasn't truly broken. The predator's mind remained intact, meticulously cataloging every lesson from his capture, every weakness revealed. Noah stepped away from the house one last time. Rain fell softly now, washing over the street, cooling the tension coiled tight in his chest. But in the quiet, he could still hear it, a rhythmic tapping, faint but steady, echoing in the distance. A cane against wet pavement. A heartbeat. And a promise that not all monsters can be fully restrained. Story 3, The Underwear Sniffer. Part 1, Segment 1. The first snow of the season had come early that year, blanketing Denver in thick, suffocating white. Liam Brooks trudged along Colfax Avenue, boots crunching in powdery layers, fog rising from the heating vents of the surrounding duplexes. The sky was a leaden grey, low-hanging clouds pressing down on the city like a weight, and the streetlights flickered weakly against the heavy snowfall. His breath came in visible bursts, mingling with the cold wind. He had been home for less than a week, unpacking boxes after a temporary assignment at a logistics firm downtown, and already he felt the uneasy tension of a new city pressing against him. Moving was always a mix of excitement and dread, but this time, there was a subtle, nagging unease he couldn't explain. The duplex he'd rented was modest, a narrow, brick facade, 2 floors, and a small, snow-covered yard. The upstairs unit was his. Below lived Roy Delgado, a plumber by trade, whose presence he had barely noticed during the day. Roy was quiet, polite, and, at least in public, unremarkable. But Liam had sensed something odd from the beginning. A lingering glance too long, a shadow at the window when he passed outside, a smell in the hallway that seemed faint but persistent. Liam shrugged it off. Maybe paranoia. The isolation of winter, the stress of moving, it was all logical. But that night, as he set up the small security camera he'd purchased for peace of mind, the gnawing feeling returned. He positioned the camera to cover the living room and hallway, angling it toward the front door. Then, almost instinctively, he set a secondary device inside his bedroom, pointing toward his dresser. Just in case, he muttered, shivering in the draft of the window. The wind howled outside, rattling the siding, shaking loose the soft blanket of snow. Liam wrapped a sweater tighter around himself, seated at his laptop, and started to check the feeds. Nothing unusual. The street was empty, the hallway below dark, and his unit quiet. He was just about to close the laptop when a flicker appeared on the secondary feed, the bedroom camera. At first, he thought it was a glitch. A shadow perhaps. But no. The movement was precise. Measured. Slow, deliberate. And unmistakable. He froze. There, reflected in the small mirror of his dresser, was Roy Delgado's face. He was kneeling on the floor, head bowed, not in prayer, not in cleaning, not in fixing, but sniffing. Liam's stomach twisted violently. He felt bile rise. He stared, unable to comprehend the scene. Roy's hand rested on a small pile of clothing, underwear, Liam realized with horror, picking them up, one by one, inhaling them with deliberate reverence. His movements were methodical, almost ritualistic. Liam wanted to scream. To run. To unplug the camera and pretend it hadn't happened. But his body betrayed him, he was rooted in place, frozen by disbelief and terror. The wind outside howled, shaking the window. Liam's pulse thudded violently as he considered his next move. He could confront him now. But what if Roy noticed? What if Roy attacked? No. He needed evidence. He needed to be sure before he acted. The laptop blinked again. Roy was standing now, holding a pair of underwear up to his face, closing his eyes, taking in the scent with a focus that was almost sacred. Then, as if sensing Liam's observation, he froze. The reflection in the mirror caught Liam's gaze. For a second, their eyes seemed to meet, not physically, but across the distance of awareness, through some preternatural sense of intrusion. Panic surged. Liam's first instinct was to run. But he had nowhere to go. The front door led into the snowstorm, the car was a block away, and the thought of stepping outside into the white void while Roy was watching was unbearable. Then Roy moved. Slowly, deliberately, he approached the staircase leading to Liam's apartment. His face calm, almost benign, the cane he carried faintly tapping against the wood beneath the snow-dampened floorboards. Liam's heart leapt into his throat. He grabbed the only thing he could, a small paring knife from the kitchen counter, and positioned himself near the bedroom door, ready to defend, ready to strike. Roy's knock was soft, polite. Hesitant even. "Liam," he said, voice low but measured. "I think we should talk." Liam swallowed hard, adrenaline pumping. Stay out," he stammered. Roy tilted his head, almost amused. I'm only here to explain. The snow outside was gusting harder now, blanketing the world in white, muffling every sound except the faint, eerie creak of the floorboards beneath Roy's careful steps. Liam's grip tightened on the knife, the cold biting his fingers. Every instinct screamed that he was dangerously close. Then, without warning, Roy's expression shifted. Calm, collected, now violent. With one swift motion, he smashed the paring knife against the window behind him, the glass shattering in a shower of jagged edges and sparks. The wind, the snow, and the cold air rushed in, whipping around Liam and throwing him off balance. Roy moved like a storm himself, fast, terrifying, unrelenting. Liam stumbled backward, paring knife useless in hand. Roy was at the door in seconds, swinging the cane in arcs meant to intimidate, to dominate. Liam ducked, heart hammering, mind racing. In a desperate move, he lunged forward, stabbing at Roy with the paring knife. The tip caught him, a thin red line blossoming across Roy's arm, but it only seemed to anger the man further. Liam twisted, breaking free of the hallway, and bolted toward the front door, snow and wind lashing against him. Outside, the world was a white blur. Visibility was almost zero. Liam's boots sank into the drifts as he ran, gasping, searching for the street, for life, for anyone who could help. Behind him, Roy's presence was immediate, a looming shadow moving with terrifying precision through the storm. Liam tripped, falling hard onto the icy pavement, knife flying from his hand. Pain shot through his leg as he scrambled back to his feet. And then, a distant sound, the siren of a police car cutting through the storm. Roy froze, just for a second, surveying the approaching lights. That split-second hesitation was enough. Liam seized the moment, diving behind a snowbank, hiding as the patrol car skidded into view. Officers jumped out, shouting commands. Roy hesitated, then bolted, disappearing into the storm, faster than any human should have been able to move through deep snow. The officers split, searching the area. Liam collapsed against the snowbank, chest heaving, hands shaking violently. One of the officers approached, helping him to his feet. "You okay?" the officer asked, flashlight cutting through the snow. I think so," Liam whispered. "But he has a basement. I saw things. Horrible things." The patrol officers radioed in backup. They returned to the duplex. There, beneath the floorboards, they discovered a horrifying trove, hundreds of pairs of underwear meticulously catalogued, frozen in airtight containers. Worse, in a locked freezer, the remains of 3 victims were found, preserved in chilling detail. Liam's stomach churned as reality sank in. Every instinct he'd had about Roy, every feeling of unease, every unexplainable glance, he hadn't imagined it. Roy Delgado was not just a voyeur. He was a serial predator, calculating and cold. And somehow, terrifyingly, he had been living among them, blending in, unnoticed, until Liam had uncovered the truth. As Liam was escorted away, blankets draped over him, his mind replayed the first moment he had seen Roy in his bedroom, sniffing, methodical, ritualistic. Every shiver, every fear, every decision he had made to survive felt insignificant against the full scope of what he had uncovered. Outside, the snow continued to fall. The city was silent in its blanket of white, hiding secrets beneath every roof, behind every door. But tonight, at least, the most immediate danger had been contained. And yet, Liam knew one truth that refused to leave him: even behind bars, some monsters are never fully restrained. Segment 2. The storm didn't let up. Snow whipped across Colfax Avenue in dense curtains, drifting into every crevice of the city. Liam trudged toward the emergency shelter the police had set up, boots heavy, muscles aching from the fall. Marcy had not been there this time. He had insisted on keeping the officers between him and Roy, who had disappeared into the blizzard but remained very much in his mind. Even with the patrol cars nearby, Liam's fear did not abate. He could feel Roy's presence in the storm, the residual terror from seeing those frozen, meticulously stored victims pressing into his chest. Every snowflake seemed to carry a whisper, every gust of wind a shadow moving behind the swirling white. The officers surrounding him radioed in updates. They had started a grid search, flashing lights cutting through the white haze, sirens muted by the wind. Liam was grateful but not safe. Deep down, he knew Roy had learned to anticipate pursuit. Every pattern could be exploited, every escape route memorized. This wasn't luck, it was methodical. Liam tried to steady himself, pulling his coat tighter. His hands were numb from cold and panic. How could someone like that live among people? And how many more? He muttered to himself. The thought of Roy's prior victims, carefully curated and hidden in that basement, made his stomach churn violently. One officer, young and determined, leaned over to him. "Do you think he's alone out there?" "I don't know," Liam admitted. "But he doesn't act randomly. He plans. Every step. Every movement. His, precise." The words barely left his mouth when the faint crunch of snow alerted them. Liam froze, turning his head toward the sound. A shadow moved with unnatural swiftness along the edge of a dimly lit alley. It wasn't obscured by the snow. It glided with purpose. The officers raised their weapons, training flashlights. Roy Delgado. He moved toward them, head low, glasses glinting, cane tapping softly on ice. His pace was calm, deliberate, almost casual, as though he were taking a morning stroll rather than stalking prey. The officers shouted commands. "Stop! Freeze!" Roy ignored them. His eyes flicked toward Liam, and for a moment, the storm seemed to quiet, as though nature itself was holding its breath. That gaze, the calm, predatory focus, made Liam's blood run cold. "Move!" Liam yelled, trying to pull the nearest officer between him and Roy. But Roy's movements were terrifyingly fluid. He lunged suddenly, bypassing the officers, striking at Liam with his cane in a calculated swing. Liam ducked, feeling the cold metal swipe inches from his shoulder. The officers fired their tasers, the prongs barely missing as Roy ducked and weaved, unscathed. Chaos erupted. Snow blew into eyes, visibility dropped to near zero, and the officers fumbled, trying to contain him. Liam's heart raced. He realized they couldn't stop Roy, not out there, not in the storm. He needed a plan. He remembered the basement, the freezer, the hidden compartment, the evidence. If he could lead Roy there, maybe he could trap him. Maybe. But it was risky. The storm and the duplex icy yard made the approach dangerous. "Follow me!" Liam shouted to the officers, his voice cutting through the wind. He sprinted toward the duplex, every step calculated to stay in the light while keeping Roy within view. The snow swallowed his boots, slowed him, but he pushed on. Roy pursued, eerily silent except for the occasional tap of the cane on ice. His breathing was controlled, measured, and for a brief, terrifying instant, Liam felt that the man wasn't human at all, more a shadow, an inevitable force moving through the blizzard. Reaching the duplex, Liam yanked the door open. The storm's roar followed them inside. Officers poured in behind him, flashlights illuminating the slick floors. Roy's eyes adjusted instantly. He darted forward, bypassing the first wave of officers, aiming for the staircase to the basement. Liam blocked the way. "No! Stop!" Roy froze for a second, considering, then lunged. Liam sidestepped, letting him pass, and slammed the heavy kitchen door shut. Officers rushed to barricade it further, but Roy was already probing for weaknesses, tapping the door frame with his cane, testing. Inside, Liam felt a moment of relief, but it was fleeting. He knew Roy. He had anticipated containment. The man had contingency after contingency. Roy's voice echoed through the storm-laden house. "You cannot hide from me. Not tonight. Not ever. You only delay the inevitable." The officers formed a line, aiming flashlights and weapons at the basement door. The cane tapped against the wood, slow, deliberate. Every second stretched, measured, a countdown of suspense. Liam's pulse pounded, adrenaline surging through his veins. Suddenly, Roy slammed the cane against the door. The wood cracked. Officers stepped back instinctively. Then, from behind them, Liam heard a faint whirring. It was subtle, almost drowned by the storm, but it was there: hidden cameras, sensors, alarms. Roy had anticipated intrusion from every angle. One officer shouted to Liam, "Go upstairs. Now." Liam hesitated. Roy had outmaneuvered them before, but now they had numbers. Now, perhaps, they could finally contain him. Roy lunged again. A struggle erupted at the basement door. The cane clattered to the floor. Officers wrestled him back, finally pinning him with physical strength combined with tactical precision. He fought, twisting, agile and terrifying, but the sheer numbers, 5 officers, coordinated, held him fast. Liam caught his breath, looking down at the figure beneath the dim light. Roy's glasses were smudged, his face wet with snow, but his expression was almost serene, calculated. Not fear. Not panic. Control. Backup arrived shortly after. Roy Delgado was restrained, cuffed, and finally removed from the duplex. Liam and the officers moved carefully through the basement, discovering the full extent of his collection. Freezers, storage boxes, dozens of items catalogued meticulously. 3 victims preserved in ice, frozen, horrifyingly detailed. Every pair of underwear, every personal item catalogued with precision. Liam's stomach churned. He had survived by inches, by chance, by quick thinking. But the realization was unavoidable: Roy Delgado had spent years planning, observing, and cataloguing. And now, finally, the predator had been caught, but only because of a rare combination of risk, persistence, and sheer luck. Outside, the storm began to relent, light breaking through the clouds like a pale promise. Liam shivered, exhausted, but alive. Officers led him away, blankets wrapped around his shoulders, adrenaline slowly fading. Yet, even with Roy taken into custody, Liam's mind wouldn't rest. The terror of knowing what had been collected, what had been hidden, what could have been lost forever, it was something that would linger. And deep down, a horrifying truth remained: Roy Delgado's mind, meticulous and obsessive, had survived. The man had been caught physically, but the patterns, the knowledge, the calculations, they lived on. And some monsters, Liam knew, never truly stop. Part 3 is Segment 1. The early morning air was biting, sharp enough to make Liam's lungs sting as he was escorted to the police station for further questioning. Snow still clung to his coat, soaking through his gloves and boots, and the adrenaline from the chase had begun to ebb, leaving behind a tremor that ran from his toes to his jaw. Marcy had called as soon as she could, her voice a lifeline in the storm-laden night, reassuring him that she would meet him at the station. Inside the precinct, the warmth was almost jarring. Fluorescent lights reflected off pale tile, officers moving with quiet efficiency, radios crackling in the background. Liam sank into a chair, shaking, trying to comprehend what had just transpired. The storm outside had muffled the city, leaving only the distant hum of traffic beneath the thick blanket of snow. But inside, the tension was palpable. The detective in charge, a tall man with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen more than Liam cared to imagine, approached. He didn't smile. He didn't offer platitudes. He simply gestured to a recorder. "Tell us everything," he said. "From the moment you noticed him in your apartment." Liam's hands were still trembling as he recounted the events. Every detail: the cameras, the peephole, Roy's ritualistic movements, the confrontation, the shattered window, the snowstorm chase. He described every inch of the basement and the freezer, the meticulously catalogued underwear, the frozen victims. The detective listened silently, taking notes, occasionally glancing at a large monitor where the security footage had been downloaded. Every so often, his gaze flicked toward a small team of officers cataloguing evidence from the duplex. When Liam finished, silence fell. Not the polite, awkward silence of someone finished speaking, but the heavy, oppressive silence of comprehension. "Do you realize what you've uncovered?" the detective finally asked. His voice was low, almost a growl. This man, he wasn't just collecting items. He had an entire system. Years of planning. He knew how to avoid detection, how to manipulate the environment, how to create traps. Liam swallowed. I know. I never imagined. The detective cut him off, voice firm. No. Most people don't. That's how he stayed hidden so long. And now, because of you, we've uncovered evidence that spans decades. Hundreds of victims, preserved, documented, some alive, some frozen. Liam's stomach dropped. Alive? Yes, the detective said, eyes narrowing. Some were likely abducted and held briefly. Others, not so lucky. We'll need forensics to confirm the identities, but this is worse than anything we imagined. Liam's hands shook as he tried to process the scale. Years of stalking, cataloging, freezing victims, every movement methodical. And he had been so close to being trapped, just another body preserved in that basement. The detective's phone buzzed. He glanced down at it, then back at Liam. He's still under containment, but he's not fully controlled. His mind is calculating, obsessive. We've isolated him, but we need to interview him carefully. He's already begun mapping our responses. Every interaction, every question, he's learning. Liam shivered. The man had been watching him, knowing him, anticipating him. Even now, restrained, Roy Delgado was already strategizing, planning. A door opened, and Marcy stepped inside. Relief washed over Liam, and he rose unsteadily. She grabbed his arm, holding on tightly. "Are you okay?" she whispered. I think so," he said, voice breaking. The weight of the night pressed on him. But he's terrifying. The detective stepped forward. "We're going to start interrogations shortly. You'll be involved in identifying items and confirming events, but you need to rest. He's dangerous, not just physically, but mentally. He manipulates, observes, and anticipates." Hours passed. Liam and Marcy sat in a small room off the main floor, watching as officers brought in evidence, clothing items, personal effects, frozen specimens from the basement. Every item catalogued added another layer of horror to the night's events. Finally, the interrogation began. Roy Delgado was brought in, restrained but calm. His glasses were smudged, snow remnants clinging to his coat, but his expression was serene, calculating. He made no attempt to resist. His eyes, however, flicked toward Liam immediately. "You," he said, voice smooth, deliberate. "You've disrupted my work." Liam's pulse surged. "You're under arrest. You're done." Roy's gaze was unwavering. "Arrested? I am contained. But the mind, the system, the patterns, they remain intact. You cannot erase what I have known, what I have catalogued, what I have built. I am eternal, in a sense." The detective leaned forward, voice steady, cutting through the tension. "We have everything. Evidence, witnesses, documentation. It's over, Roy." A faint smile brushed Roy's lips. "Over? Perhaps. But you do not understand. The thrill, the method, the control, that does not end in chains. You've only delayed it. I have studied patterns, behaviors, systems. Every response you make, I have anticipated. You cannot undo decades of calculation with paper and cuffs." Liam swallowed, heart hammering. He felt the cold terror from the night flood back, the inevitability of Roy's presence, the meticulous obsession that had almost ended him. But even as Roy spoke, officers systematically secured evidence, taking photos, recording, cataloging. They documented every item, every movement, every detail. The law had caught him in the net he had failed to anticipate. As later, after the interrogation, Liam and Marcy were allowed to leave. Snow still blanketed Denver, but the morning light revealed a city washed clean, cold, and quiet. Liam stepped out, taking a deep breath, the sharp air filling his lungs. Relief was tempered by the weight of memory, the knowledge of what Roy had done, and the scale of his obsession. Marcy placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's over. You survived." "I did," Liam said, voice barely audible. "But he's still there. In some way. Even in custody, he's thinking, planning." Marcy nodded. "Some monsters never truly stop." Liam glanced at the distant duplex, its brick walls now harmless in daylight. But he knew the truth, inside, and perhaps in the minds of those who had observed him before, Roy Delgado's pattern, his obsession, remained. He had been stopped, but he had not changed. He was still calculating, still watching, still eternal in his methodical world of control. For Liam, that realization would linger far longer than the cold or the snow. Some monsters, once unleashed, leave marks on reality that cannot be erased. And even as he walked away from the scene, every crunch of snow beneath his boots reminded him of it, the inevitability of calculation, the persistence of obsession, the enduring presence of a mind that refuses to die. Segment 2. The duplex was silent now, a frozen tomb of secrets. Snow drifted against the windows, muted by frost. The storm long subsided into a dull, bitter cold. Liam returned with Marcy, escorted by officers for the final inspection. The basement door loomed before them, ominous in the weak morning light filtering through grimy windows. The memory of Roy's cold, precise movements pressed in on him like a vice. Inside, the first officer carefully opened the basement door. Liam's stomach churned as the dim light revealed the horrors they had already glimpsed: hundreds of meticulously labeled underwear packages, storage boxes stacked in neat rows, and the air thick with the metallic scent of ice and disinfectant. The freezer unit loomed at the far end of the basement, its door locked with a heavy padlock and chains. Roy Delgado sat restrained in a nearby chair, his cane abandoned beside him. He didn't struggle, didn't protest. But his eyes followed Liam like a hawk, calculating. He said softly, almost conversationally. "You've returned. How curious. You wish to inspect the collection again?" Liam felt bile rise in his throat. You're a monster," he spat, voice shaking. "All of this, people, frozen, under your control. Why?" Roy's lips curved into a faint, patient smile. "Why? Because control is eternal. Preservation is the only way to truly understand beauty. Impermanence is weakness. I merely corrected that flaw. And now, you see the system in its entirety." Marcy shivered, eyes darting from the rows of containers to the freezer. Those people." "Yes," Roy said calmly. "They are eternal. Preserved. A testament to method, calculation, and patience." An officer spoke, breaking the tense silence. "We are opening the freezer. Step back." Liam turned, heart hammering. The chains rattled as the officer forced the lock open. The door swung wide, revealing the preserved bodies, 3 victims, frozen and terrifyingly intact, their eyes closed, faces pale beneath the icy sheen. The sight made Liam's stomach twist violently, but he forced himself to remain steady, documenting, confirming, absorbing the reality of Roy's obsession. Roy's voice cut through the silence. "Do not look so surprised. I've always been meticulous. Every step calculated. Every precaution in place. You merely glimpsed the surface." Liam's hands shook as he stepped forward, courage and terror interwoven. "This ends now. No one else will ever suffer." Roy's gaze didn't waver. "Ends? Perhaps. For now. But understand this, the mind does not yield to chains. What you see here is finite, yes. But the ideas, the patterns, the knowledge, they persist. You cannot erase them from the world. Not truly." The officers worked quickly, documenting every container, every item, every detail. Liam assisted, confirming the labels and items he recognized. Each discovery, each horrifying artifact, reinforced the scale of Roy's obsession and cruelty. As they finished cataloging, Roy remained calm, almost serene. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he shifted in his chair. "Do you realize," he said softly, "that of all the patterns in this world, few are as predictable as fear? Few respond as I anticipate?" Liam met his gaze, voice trembling but firm. "We are not afraid of you anymore." A faint laugh escaped Roy, soft, almost musical. "Perhaps. But fear is not always loud. Sometimes it lingers quietly, embedding itself into thought, shaping behavior. You survived, yes. But the pattern of survival is dictated by observation, by anticipation, by knowing where the cracks lie." Marcy grabbed Liam's arm, grounding him. "Enough. He's contained. He's not going anywhere." The officers secured the remaining evidence, readying it for transport and forensic analysis. Each labeled container, each frozen victim, each catalogued piece of clothing was a testament to Roy's meticulous mind. Liam realized the scale of what had been uncovered, and the scale of what had been prevented by chance and quick thinking. Finally, Roy was escorted out of the basement, still restrained. His gaze lingered on Liam, unwavering. "You think this ends with me in chains," he said softly. "But knowledge, pattern, persistence, those cannot be captured so easily. Remember that." The door closed behind him, the sound final. The basement, once a place of horror,